We are wanting to get started because we have a whole bunch here. And one of our favorite things to do is a deep dive. And so what a deep dive allows us to do is to be able to go from beginning to end. How do we use this tool? And so we have Recur 360 here to be able to offer this deep dive. So I'd like to go ahead and start some of our conversation and make sure that we're doing some welcoming. And I am going to go ahead and say, so welcome to Appy Hour, and we are going to be talking about enterprise invoices and payment automations with QuickBooks. And we have our sponsor here, Recur 360, who of course is going to take us through a deep dive of how to use it.
Yay.
Heather, would you like to introduce yourself?
I will do that, although I feel like I know everybody already. My name is Heather Satterlee. I am the founder and owner of Satterlee Business Solutions. And one arm of that is Satterlee Training and Consulting. And the other arm of that is Satterlee Accounting Services. And we help small to mid-sized businesses with their accounting and tax work. And then we also help to streamline their processes and train them. And we do a lot of integration and technology consulting. And I build a lot of automations. And now I feel like I'm stepping deeper into that developer role, which is really fun.
Well, I think, hi, Kathy, I just saw you jumped in. Gosh, I feel like the automation space is hypercritical. I feel like it's fun. So, whenever you're doing something like that together, then you also have a platform to be able to say, here is the expected results that you should have. And that helps you to know whenever you have something that goes wrong. So that's one of the reasons that we get together and have these powwows, is to be able to say, this is what you should expect in your results. And here's how to use it. And here's the best candidates for it.
The best things happen.
You don't have a stop sign.
What's that, Andrew?
It's one of my employees jumped in using my link. So
so there's two of you. You've cloned yourself. Yeah. That's fabulous.
Is that another superpower?
It is. Well, as a Jedi, I can project myself. Right. So.
I love it. I love it.
We were talking about technology that's coming next. And so we were having a conversation with our kids, and we were talking about, one of the things that may be next is holographic communication. So you're
like when Obi-Wan projects, or no, it was Princess Leia is projected out of R2-D2.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes.
Yep.
That's going to be us. We're going to have little R2-D2s, and they'll project. Liz will come right into my living room.
I don't even think we're going to have an R2-D2 for it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
We're going to surpass that.
It'll be on our Apple Watch or something. Yeah.
So I want to say thank you to ADP, our champagne level sponsor for 2021. I can't believe we're already in October.
I know.
Wow. So many of you are heads down doing work. You've taken time out to be here today, and I am very appreciative of that. And I'm thankful that you're here, because you're going to be able to see Recur 360 today, who is our sponsor for this episode. I also want to make sure that we go through, our agenda is going to be discovering how to automate using Recur 360. And then of course, we're going to talk about a drink, because that's one of my favorite pieces. And somehow we have missed your introduction slide here, Andrew.
No, it's in there. It's added, but I think, do you want me to pull it out?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
I got it right here.
Thank you.
Don't do that. Let me go ahead and share my screen. There you are.
All right.
I'm really pleased to have Andrew Abrams, who's the CEO and founder of Recur 360 with us. And Andrew, you're one of us. You're one of us. 30 years as a QuickBooks consultant. You've got tons of accolades in that role. And then you decided to create some magic with your technology. So, and Recur 360 is not the first step, right?
No, we, my previous partners and I, as we were doing all sorts of different QuickBooks consulting, we constantly had customers come to us asking us to solve a need for them. So kind of like you're delving into developing with Zapier or similar things. At one point, we're like, we've got so many requests, let's just buy an app development company. So that's what we did. And it was primarily around the iOS, iPad timeframe in the early 2010s, where we were just developing apps for that. And then it was kind of like, we really need to connect these into QuickBooks. And then that just kind of evolved into us just developing things for QuickBooks directly. And now apps are great, but it's more of the web platforms that integrate that really drive businesses these days, not so much the apps that you download on your mobile phone for convenience. So it's just an evolution. But yeah, that's just kind of what happened. You know, customers drive what you do as a consultant based on their business needs.
Do you do anything still in your daily life with QuickBooks?
Other than run my company on it? I've actually been able over the last 2 years to transition out of the core of consulting to focus more on our business as an automation platform or as a hosting platform. So really as SaaS, though we still do some consulting, depending on what the needs are. We don't really focus on that so much anymore. We partner with companies like you now. You do the consulting, let us focus on what we do. There's more synergy there than trying to step back into doing consulting in general.
Super exciting for sure. No, that's awesome. And I love to learn that you guys build out custom stuff. So if there is a unique need, we're going to be learning about Recur 360, but we're also, it should be known that you guys also can do custom solutions, which is really cool.
Correct. Yeah. Our focus, again, custom surrounding around how does it improve a QuickBooks user's life? Awesome. How do we make it better? That's, rather than just custom programming anything, which anybody can do, you got to have a focus. So
definitely. Fantastic.
Have a focus. Well, and when you're very clear about what it is that you're doing, that helps us to be able to be really clear to how we should do it.
For years now, they've been talking about the niche. You niche, you become really, really good at what you do. And that's focusing is how you get there. Because if you try to be a jack of all trades, you're going to be pretty good at maybe a bunch of things, but you won't be really good at any one thing.
And I live that life. So you definitely got to be a boutique and have a focus rather than trying to do everything. You do that when you're young and hungry, but at a certain point you do like to sleep. And so you got to focus.
Totally.
Ooh, it wasn't that the truth. So whenever you're young and hungry, or just hungry, it's like sometimes you go through those phases where you say yes to things that you shouldn't say yes to.
To everything.
Right.
Yeah, that's a life lesson.
I've never done that.
Sure, we can do that. And then you turn to the left. Can we actually do that? Because I just said we can do it. So.
Right. I think that's the true mark of an entrepreneur is that you say yes before you're sure you should have said yes.
Well, okay, so that's part of that fake it till you make it. There is a bit of that inside of all of us. But I also think that it's important to know that there are areas that you shine. And so I put this over there. What is your alter ego? So, what is it that you feel like is your superpower? Like we all have areas. I really enjoy connecting apps. I really enjoy workflows. That is an area that I shine. So I think it's cool that in our community, we're not just all bean counters.
I think our superpower as a company is customers will come to our live chat and say, we really like your software. Here's our need. Is that possible? And then I'll chat my developers and they're like, yeah, it'll take this amount of hours. We can roll it out in 30 to 60 days. And I get back on the chat and say, if you want that, it's yours. Here's the time, here's the cost. And usually we close that and we can solve a need pretty quickly as long as it's within the realm of possibility.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. So you already went through the agenda,
yes,
Liz. We thought a good place to start because what we're going to be talking about is automating payments in QuickBooks. So automating that sales, kind of that sales process and actually collecting the payments and staying on track of payments and recognizing revenue and things like that.
Well,
right?
So for us, one really easy place to start is, of course, always thinking about our industry, right? So for many of us, we're on call it reoccurring payments, call it, subscription prices, call it fixed fee, call it value pricing, whatever you want to call it. It's recurring. And so we want that reoccurring to be the easiest method possible. And so same thing for our clients. And I can tell you that there's definitely times whenever there's areas that QuickBooks is great at And you even like identified a couple of them here, Heather. So being able to say that we've got some advanced QuickBooks Online advanced features with the reminders and the automated workflows. For those who are using those automated workflows, it's great. For somebody who says they need something more robust, that's where you sometimes have to create these workarounds, and that's time consuming, and that can be frustrating.
And it can also be not super reliable, right? When you're doing, convoluted workflows to make it work, trying to fit, a square peg in a round hole, things slip through the crack and it's not optimized, right? So, if you have a simple workflow and you have a recurring, transaction that's the same amount every month on the same day, sure, that's something that you can automate pretty easily in QuickBooks Online. And there's new features that are coming out that give you more innovative ways to pay. But when it comes to things like, more complicated solutions, like, revenue recognition, like that's a big one for us, right? So we have people that are on, just because they're on subscription pricing doesn't always mean that we are, in fact, it usually doesn't mean that we're recognizing revenue in an accrual-based system in the month that they pay us, right? Especially if you're paying, if you have clients that give you a discount when you pay up front, right? You've got to figure out a way to automate that too.
And here we've got the new invoice links, which I actually really dig. So I really like the so I like the option to be able to say, okay, I sent that email, but I also want to put it in maybe a different communication channel, say Slack or whatever. I really do try to stay away from giving out any cell phone information. So I really tried to not text, but I have been known to do that in the past. I have. So I do like being able to have those invoice links that allows people to pay.
So go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to change to a scenario that is a frustration. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how many of you in the chat, can you tell us that have you even heard about these new invoice links? I think if you have a QuickBooks Payments account, you may have seen this new tab in your sales center in QuickBooks Online. It's pretty new. And what it allows you to do is create a link that you can send to a customer, and they can pay it, right? So they get the link, they click to pay it. And when you create the link, you're not actually creating any transaction in QuickBooks. You're creating basically a link to create a transaction in QuickBooks. You send it to the customer. They put in their information, you put in the customer name, obviously, you put in the description of what it is that they're purchasing. You can assign a product and service to it if you want to, but you don't have to. And then you send it to them, and then they pay it. And when they pay it, it creates a sales receipt in QuickBooks Online automatically and charges their credit card or ACH transfer. So this is really new QuickBooks technology. If you have payments, it's already there. Not everybody has it yet, but a lot of people do. And it's very helpful. And the links can only be used once. So you can send the link and, people can view it. But as soon as they pay it, it goes away. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. So we've had that for like 4 years, that kind of capability. So, that's a big difference between, like, QuickBooks takes time to develop their integrations, where companies like us do it shorter time frame, faster and earlier on. And then, it's harder to move a big ship like QuickBooks, but it's cool that they added it. We have another way of doing that. So that's.
Well, so one of the things that it's really nice for is if you're going to say, hey, I don't want to collect the payment information directly from my customer. That is one way to utilize this. I'm going to share a frustration that I have is that, I've got, and this is not just one client that does this. I've got a couple of clients that their scenario is they've got one master email and they need to create reoccurring payments on that one master email. Well, there's not a way to automate that. And so if you've got a company that's based on those kinds of payments, oh my gosh, you really start getting into a very, very manual, tedious process that can have errors in it. So that's a frustration that I have.
Well, I can solve your frustrations.
I know, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited because
Awesome.
it's not just my frustration, it's the client's frustration. A couple of these clients are big enough that they have their own internal staff and they've hired into a position to be able to say, okay, we're going to take this payment right here, apply it over into QuickBooks. And it's a very manual thing back and forth. And gosh, it doesn't need to be. And they've had a couple of times where accidentally they've double billed because it is very tedious and time consuming and humans make errors. It's embarrassing to go back and say, I'm sorry, I charged you twice.
It is embarrassing. And it's a pain and it's inefficient. The other thing that I had on here that we didn't talk about is, as pro advisors, if you're a pro advisor, you get a discount on those merchant service fees. And so, but you have to ask for them. They're not going to offer them up.
Ooh, good point. So you do have to make sure.
Remember to go to your
Sure,
pro
have a
advisor
discount.
portal.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the thing that is important to remember there is that, they're not automatically given. So.
And Intuit is also a premium for merchant services. They are not trying to compete with anybody out there. You pay a premium to use Intuit merchant services versus other payment processors out there that like we integrate with or other platforms utilize in their own systems. So.
Hey, I have a question from Richard in the chat who's asking if Recur 360 is available in Canada.
Ooh.
So yeah, we connect with QuickBooks Desktop Canada, but the QuickBooks Online API for Canada is different than QuickBooks Online USA. But I do have Canadian-based companies using the US-based version of QuickBooks Online, and then they're using Canadian currency as the primary currency. And then we connect them with a Canadian processor like Elavon or Stripe or something like that. So if the scenario fits, it works well. It just depends if you're on QBO Canada or QBO USA. Yes, QBO USA. And if you're on QB Desktop Canada, not a problem.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yep.
So we had a poll. We wanted to know. Let me see if we have this. I'm going to launch a poll because what we were really curious about, Liz and I were putting this together. We're like, we want to know stuff. And so one of the things that we wanted to know was what features would you want to see added to QuickBooks? And I'm going to go ahead and launch this. And it's just because Liz and I are curious. Like, would you like more robust merchant service features? Can you guys see the poll?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Automated payment plans, automated revenue recognition, integrations, other payment processors, or if it's something else, just throw it in chat. We're curious, like, what is it where do you feel that the QuickBooks merchant service and automated payments is lacking? And what would be really exciting for you?
Okay, I see some others. So I'm watching chat. I'm watching both.
It's like a race. This is like a race. I can see it like they're so close. It's almost like watching.
No, and what's interesting is we asked this question when we started developing our platform, and it basically solves each one of those in there. Customer needs drive innovation,
Right, totally.
Well, and I think that where Heather and I see the best solutions come from is the feedback. So you're listening to that feedback, and if the people are moving over here, being able to hear that is really important.
Yeah, this is a good one. Jessica Galili says, save customer payment info and charge later at a due date. And you can do that too, right? With Recur 360. So yeah, totally.
You're not going to hear a lot of no's from me today.
I know. It's amazing.
You're not going to hear a lot of no's.
All right. So it looks like a little over half of you have participated. We don't do CP, we hang out and we have fun. But if you want to vote, I'm going to give you guys 5 seconds to do so. And then I'm going to close this out and we'll take a look at it. I'll share it with you, all you guys. So 5, 4, 3, 2, I went fast, and 1. And I'm going to go ahead and share it out. So it looks like the bulk, 46% said integrations with other payment processors. Like, we're done with Intuit payments. Give us something else.
Boom chakalaka.
Yeah. Then we have more robust merchant service features, which is kind of vague, which is tied with automated payment plans, which would be really awesome. You send an invoice and then people can make payments against it. And then automated revenue recognition, 29%, and then 14% are sharing in chat. And Kathy wants to see merchant services for QBO and QBDT be the same. So yeah, I agree. That would certainly make it easier for us pro advisors, right? Because then we would know what to expect in both. It would be the same. And then Elizabeth says she would like to have an unvoid reverse function.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that one, Elizabeth.
If you void an invoice, it zeroes out either the quantity or the value.
Right.
So it'd be nice
to
to
restore.
unvoid or restore it
Restore.
to reset the values on it. That's why you should never delete. You should always void.
Agreed.
Normally, before I void, I edit the description to put in what was in the quantity and the value.
Right.
That way, if you ever have to go back, you can reinstate it. But
that's a great tip. That's a great tip.
Okay. Well, so
right. I'm going to close. I closed out the poll.
Okay.
And I think we're going to start drinking. Is that all right with everybody? You ready to start drinking?
I already started.
I'm game. I'm game.
It's only 1:30 for me.
So an old fashioned is kind of one of my go-to drinks. I like bourbon. I like whiskey. I'm a Crown fan. I would rather be drinking something like that than vodka or a couple of the other ones. So you get my vote on this one.
Now this one's good. So mine's different than yours. And it only has 2 ingredients. It is still whiskey. It's not bourbon whiskey, but it's peanut butter whiskey.
Interesting. I like that.
It's Screwball peanut butter whiskey, which
is it smoky?
Is really, really. Ooh, that's.
I'm
beautiful.
just going. I'm going straight from the bottle right now.
Yeah.
We're not blending it or anything.
And then I used some cranberry seltzer. So I'll tell you how it is.
How fun!
It's actually good. It's actually really good.
All right, I need to know about this peanut butter whiskey.
Oh my gosh! Well, I'm gonna see you in a couple of weeks, and I just may bring a bottle with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's really yummy.
You're gonna put it on your carry-on? Okay.
I'd have to ship it.
Right.
I may have to ship it, or I'll just go to a liquor store in Texas.
I bet you they have those. Mm-hmm.
I bet they do.
So I think, are we passing this over to you, Andrew, so that you can drive this?
If we're ready to do that, yeah, we have, a lot of different things. It'd be good if you kind of maybe bring up a scenario or discuss a topic, and I can just pop in on a setting and kind of show that, or I can just give an overall overview.
Well, I think we want to see an overall view of what people should expect. And so that way they have an idea of what is it that they're going to be doing and looking at with their customers. So
do you want me to bring the slides back up, Andrew, and we can just talk through them first?
Sure. I mean, we can just kind of go quickly through this. It's easier just to kind of pop into the platform and show it. But in
whatever
essence,
you want to do is fine. If you want to drive, I'm cool with that, or we can go through these slides real quick.
Yeah, why don't we tee up just a couple things, and then I can show features faster than a slide would show it anyway. So essentially, for people that have been in the Intuit ecosystem, as they like to call it, for a long time, Intuit has gone from using QuickBooks Web Connector to the Intuit Partner Program to Intuit Sync Manager to an internal sync. And about 6 years ago, for QuickBooks Desktop users, there was a break in that when they were leaving the IPP and going back to the Web Connector, where Intuit Payments actually got pretty disconnected from QuickBooks, or you had to manage your recurring payment in Intuit Payments separately from a memorized transaction in QuickBooks. I'm talking QuickBooks Desktop right now. Mm-hmm. Or on the QuickBooks Online side, if you wanted to do recurring transactions, you had to do it as a sales receipt, not an invoice and a payment. So if the sales receipt doesn't process, you don't recognize revenue. It just sits in limbo until you can collect payment, because you can't have a sales receipt without a payment. And on the QuickBooks Desktop side, you can only do automated credit card. You couldn't do automated ACH. So Intuit has a lot of really great functionality in their products, but they don't always have the complete functionality that everybody needs. So we had a few customers come to us and say, hey, is there a tool out there that'll do these things? And we just kind of came up with, well, if we build it, will you pay us for it? And that really started us building the platform to not only solve those needs in QuickBooks Desktop, but in QuickBooks Online alike. So we fully integrate with both QuickBooks versions of any of their desktop. Like I said, even QuickBooks Canada, Pro Premier Enterprise. With QuickBooks Online, it's just US. And originally we focused on solving the need for recurring invoices with payments via credit card or ACH, and what happens if the payment fails, how do we recognize the revenue? So we solved for all that. And initially when we launched, we made it to Intuit's QuickBooks $100,000 app showdown back in 2017. And I like to say we came in second because we didn't win, because if you didn't win, everybody else came in second anyway. But that really helped springboard us into, well, what else can we add automation-wise into our platform around invoicing and payments that Intuit just hasn't, whether they overlooked it or it's just not on their roadmap. You know, you can't wait for an accounting software to automate your business. It's just a tool. So we built a tool that does the automations that QuickBooks just doesn't. Likewise, as you mentioned earlier, what would you like to see more with Intuit Payments? Well, if you don't have Intuit Payments, you can't use any of those automations in either version of QuickBooks. You can do memorized transactions, you can do memorized invoices, but you can't automate the payments. And there's a lot of businesses that Intuit will not underwrite that we can through our integrations with the various processors. So that's really kind of what led us to where we are as a invoicing and payments and a workflow automation platform. Is it's just, if it's not available in QuickBooks, let's just make QuickBooks better and let us handle that, and let QuickBooks just be a really good accounting tool and use it for what it's used for, but not use it for all the automations that people need that, you know, they just can't bake into their product. So.
Well, you make me want to say, so when you say that you can fund industries that others cannot, more specifically, what are you talking about? Are you talking about?
Intuit really likes the small business owner that sells candy bars or sells widgets. It's got to be tangible. Intuit will turn down IT services companies, bookkeepers, ironically, people that are selling consulting services, because those aren't tangible things that can be returned. So if somebody tries to charge it back, there's huge credit risk in that. And if there isn't something tangible there, Intuit will look at those new businesses that just start up and say, yeah, we can't underwrite you. You know, part of it is your credit as an owner has to be really good, but you have to be selling something other than vaporware. And a lot of like software as a service companies, there's nothing tangible there. So Intuit Payments will just flatly turn people down. And we have a good relationship actually with a lot of the reps at Intuit Payments, where they'll say, hey, go to Recur 360, they can get you underwritten. Now, there are certain industries you can't underwrite, like you know, credit stabilization services or alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Certain things like that, nobody will touch in most cases. But I have a lot of landscape companies or pool service companies that like Intuit turned me down. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You're providing a weekly service, but it's intangible. So it's just how Intuit looks at who do they want as a customer. And then also, if you're doing $1 million a month or more in processing, Intuit's pretty expensive and they're not very flexible. So a lot of bigger businesses will ultimately move away from Intuit as they grow, just because, you know, fees have changed. You know, QBO ACHs used to be free. Now it's $3. On QuickBooks Enterprise, it's 1% up to $10 or something. Mm-hmm. So there's certain scenarios where they either price themselves out or they just put themselves out of the mix. And well, then what do you do? Because you can't integrate any other processors into QuickBooks. And that's where we fill that gap.
So of course, you know, I want to ask industry-wise, are you funding the or the cannabis industry or the CBD industry? Is that a market that you serve?
There are processors out there that will fund that. It's typically more like credit unions than banks, and it's not your mainstream processors. But if a processor offers it and has an API, we can connect into them. So I wouldn't say with our primary partners, which are public companies, they're not funding those yet, because until the federal government removes, the class one substance or whatever, and the banks can't bank the money, mainstream credit card can't do it. But that doesn't prevent us from hooking into platforms that do.
Authorize.net is on here and they're funding CDD.
Well, authorize.net is doing, yeah. So we hook into Authorize. So they're the ones making those decisions, obviously, not us.
Nice.
But authorize.net is not just a US based company. They're international, like Stripe is. So they don't, they may have restrictions in the US, but not Canada and other countries, is probably more like it when you look at that on Authorize's website. But
yeah, well, you and I were talking the other day about I had a client that was using a processor that wasn't any of the big ones, and you were mentioning that if there's an API, that's something that you can figure out, which is awesome.
Yep.
So that's great, because a lot of times, especially with not for profits in certain industries, they're like there's preferred providers that definitely aren't QuickBooks payments.
So it looks like if Heather, do you mind moving forward? Because it looks like we actually have a slide for this, because everybody that's here, I know that lots of people like the slides, and so you always have I think it's Andrew, do you mind if I skip to the next one?
You can skip, yeah. I think a couple more minutes on slides, and then I can just jump into kind of bouncing around on what we do. But
so this has got some of those payment gateways on it, and the next one is prices. Like, that's exciting.
That is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we charge a monthly platform fee, which is $79 a month, and that gives you 2 concurrent logins. Beyond that, obviously, if you're a bigger business that has more salespeople or accountants in it, we charge an additional $5 per concurrent user login for 3 or more users. And you can use our platform with QuickBooks and your existing processor. You don't have to sign up with us for processing. But then if you want to utilize us for processing, we have an additional monthly fee for ACH and credit card, which is $20. And then, as you'll see, our ACH fees are 50 cents up to $5,000. And then above $5,000, you're looking at 0.003 times the amount of the transaction over 5,000 is what you would pay. So the 0.30%. And on the credit card side, we kind of try to stay at an average of 2.8, where, if you went to Intuit's site for QBO and Enterprise, they're around 3.3. Or Stripe or even Auth is on the higher end on a lot of those. So because of our tight integration with our partner Paya, we can offer much more attractive pricing than you would get just seeking out into it or any payment processing on your own.
Fantastic.
But you don't have to use us for payment processing. That's why we hook into other processors that you may already have a relationship with. We'll just save you money if you switch to us, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I like the batch fee for the ACH processing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those
okay.
hurt. Mm-hmm.
Do we want to go backwards at all? And we talked about that. And then the advanced features, do we want to go over those real quick?
Sure. So one thing, you're going to be sending out the slide deck to everybody?
I am. So we don't have to,
okay.
don't have to go through every slide. You're right.
So just some kind of key topics with us is we fully integrate with Avalara. So if you're already using Avalara or you want to sign up with Avalara, you can do Avalara sales tax calculation in our platform. And then you don't need Avalara integrated with your QuickBooks desktop or online. You would just use it on our side, or you could still use it in desktop or online. That's up to you, but you don't need double integrations. A couple key things that we offer you just don't get in QuickBooks are invoice proration. Automated late fees was just most recently added to QBO, but didn't exist, more than a year ago. Convenience fees. So if somebody pays you via credit card, you can pass through the processing fee to them. And you can set it up in our system that if they pay you via credit card, charge this fee. And as long as you meet your state guidelines that you're offering another form of payment like ACH, you don't charge for ACH, but you charge for the credit card. And, if you're doing couple $100,000 a month, that could be 3, 4, 5 grand on your books. Well, now you can pass that through our convenience fees. When setting up recurring invoices in QuickBooks, you can't have line items that disappear after the first time they run. You have to run it, you got to go back and edit it. So we have one-time fees that after it runs, they disappear. You can pop in dynamic date and text descriptions, not only in the line item, but in the customer memo that's driven by the date of the transaction. You don't get that in QuickBooks.
Okay, so I hear you. So for like instance, you're saying a subscription-based client also needed an installation. So you could do a one-time installation and the subscription, and then the next time that installation would go away automatically.
Yep.
Ooh, that's nice.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool.
A big feature that we have is when you click on our Pay Online link, you see all open invoices, and you could choose to pay those invoices individually, one by one, or you could choose to create one bulk payment that then gets applied to all of those invoices. That feature we just actually rolled out in last night's release, which is live now. So as a Recur 360 account owner, you can control, hey, if somebody owes me for 10 invoices, I either want one payment for all those 10 or I want 10 individual payments. It just kind of depends on how you want to reconcile things.
Well, we appreciate you releasing that feature just in time for Happy Hour to be debuted here.
And nobody's called crying or on our live chat today, which is more important that it's actually working.
That's right. That's right.
Another big feature outside of we can do custom API integrations. We do have a published API. We just don't make it fully public because we don't want to let anybody hook into us because we're dealing with payments. And the last thing you want to do is trigger 1,000 invoices and charges that shouldn't have happened. But user login security. So a lot of people will use our platform to give only their salespeople access. And we can limit access based on customer type, based on all sorts of different differentiators that up until last year didn't even exist in QuickBooks Enterprise. And in QuickBooks Online, you don't even get those features. So you can really segregate what your sales staff can see from one sales rep to another or one customer type or group to another. That just doesn't exist in QuickBooks. And then we also have what's called the bulk grid editor, which I can show is that when you are looking at your recurring invoices, if you turn on bulk grid editor, you can just pop in, make a few things save and move on to the next one. Where in QBO or desktop, you actually have to open the transaction, modify it and save it. It's a lot more steps and it takes longer. So we can make it easier where you can just go through and modify things. Again, just a feature that a customer requested and we baked it in. So
awesome.
I think with that, why don't we jump into, I can give a real quick overview of our platform. We do have tons of tutorials out there that people can go watch, and we do give live demos for people that request it. So if you allow me to share, or if I can do that right now, I will go ahead and do that. You have to enable sharing for me. It's not letting
I'm
me
sorry.
do it.
I thought I had given you the ability to do it. There you go. You're all set.
Awesome. So, okay. Let me. So when you log into our platform, you will see our dashboard. The dashboard shows you open invoices. So this would equate to your accounts receivable. Invoices that were processed within the last 30 days, if that's the interval that you have set. Something that we call a pending invoice is what you would consider an estimate or a sales receipt. It's an invoice that hasn't been marked as final. It only lives in our system until the customer approves and pays for it. And then we make it a final invoice, process a payment, and push it to QuickBooks. So we have a whole separate module where you can send, what you would consider a quote in QuickBooks terminology. You just send a pending invoice and we'll follow up until they, pay for it and it becomes active. So you see all of these different metrics when you log in, and you can certainly break those down to weekly or daily, and then all that information will change on you. And then you have a quick activity center that just kind of shows you what's been happening over the last day or so. So one of the key features of our platform is recurring invoices. So instead of using memorized transactions or a recurring sales receipt from QBO, you would use a recurring invoice in Recur 360. And inside of our recurring invoice, it's basically a few different components. One is, who's the customer, what's the interval, start dates and end dates, the kind of things that you would normally have in QuickBooks. But then we also have the payment information sitting side by side to that. So you can say, we're going to automatically process. We want to process payment on the invoice date. But if you want to process payment at a later date, you can do that in our platform based on a date frame that you choose. Or you could say, I want to process it based on the due date of the invoice, which is then driven by the terms. So if this is running 11/1, the invoice will process 11/1, and then we'll automatically process the payment net 10 days later, so 11/11. So again, you get to control that on a transaction by transaction basis.
And so is this where we would be able to say that we wanted to have multiple payments for one invoice? Is that where our control would be, is over on this setting side?
That would be under our recurring payments, or what we would call a scheduled payment. So after you set up the invoice, you can schedule payments against it. And I'll show you that also.
Okay.
So this is just, hey, I want to set up a recurring transaction, right? And either I want to be auto paid or I don't want to be auto paid, or maybe I don't have auto pay set up yet. Well, if you don't have auto pay set up yet, one of the features you were just discussing is, how do I collect their payment information? So you can go into a customer like Amy's Bird Sanctuary, and you can send her a link, which is a encrypted link, and say, hey, Amy, you owe me for all these invoices. You can pay me for these. Or you could just simply, if this customer doesn't owe you anything yet, they can just go on this link and say, I'm just going to update my payment information. We're going to store it and turn on auto pay. And once they do that, it then adds it to their account as a stored, encrypted, tokenized payment method. We're fully PCI compliant. We don't store any of that data. We just pass it over to the processor and they pass back the encryption. So when you set up a customer, you can send them this link right from their account. They can update their payment information, and now it's stored for future transactions. Then when you go set up your recurring invoice, if I start a new one for Amy's, for instance, after I select them, that's my templates wrong, drop down. Now I can select from any of their stored payment methods that they choose to store there. And we can store more than one payment method. So if you have different divisions of a business, but all under the same business, each division could have a different way to pay you on that recurring transaction. We see this a lot with landlords or service-based businesses that service rental properties and things like that. As you start defining things, like if I want to prorate or backdate this, and let's say we're going to start this on the 1st of every month, but we're going to start it today. Well, today I can add in, we'll just say a bookkeeping service. And when I add that to the transaction, there's a setting in here of whether I want to prorate it or not, or if I want to delete it after the first invoice. So now that I've prorated that, because we are on October 13th tomorrow, when that runs, instead of charging $85, it's going to charge $52.10. But then on all future monthly invoices, it'll be $85. And now if I want to add in a fee or whatever, let's just say a bag of sod, for instance, we'll say don't prorate this, but let's delete this after the first invoice. I'll say that's $100. You're bookkeeping and you're selling sod. It's a strange business, but this is what your first invoice will look like when it runs tomorrow. The next invoice, I want to delete it and I don't want to prorate it. There we go. So you can see those settings checked there. So here's the first invoice that'll run tomorrow. And then all future invoices beginning November 1st will just be for the $85. So these are little switches and configurations that you can do in our platform. You can't do natively in QuickBooks.
Well, the thing that's really nice about doing it at the time of setup is that's whenever it's fresh on people's minds. So
correct.
I feel like the loss is whenever you have to do it in two separate settings, because yes, you are correct that later on, a month later, you've forgotten what you had agreed to. So it is nice to do it all at one time.
Yep.
And And I see this as a huge use case, just even for our industry, where we're doing maybe a cleanup job that we need to charge on that first invoice. Plus, we're going into a monthly bookkeeping service. So that's perfect for being able to build that out if you're doing it after the fact, right?
Yep. And then if you have our convenience fees feature turned on, which you can see screenshots of it in the PowerPoint, you'll see what their convenience fee would be if it was enabled on here. And then from a sales tax standpoint, if you're using QBO, which this account is connected to, you could use the automated sales tax. That's part of QBO, or you could switch it to Recur 360 or to Avatax, and then Avatax API on our sandbox. And then it would automatically calculate if those items were taxable or not. I'm just going to switch it back for now. So these are different workflows depending on how you want to run your business. If you'll notice up here, I've got our dynamic descriptions dropped in. So when this invoice generates, it's going to say the invoice date of October 12th. The day before the next invoice is October 31st, and then your next invoice will be on November 1st. So these are dynamic descriptions that you can code into the line item. But you can also add that down in the customer message as well, just simply by literally copying this and then pasting it down here. And if our system sees these things, it'll show up in the customer memo. And you can also create your own dynamic descriptions based on what you want them to show. So when this runs and people look back at the invoice, they know exactly what date range it was for based on when it was generated.
So, I don't want to interrupt you, but you said you opened it up to, if we have questions, throw them at you.
Okay.
So one of my questions is a often frustration is whenever there's a failed payment, and to be able to track that down and to be able to then process again. What are some options here inside of your platform?
Sure. So if I go back to that transaction we just created, what we would do is send emails based on a due date. I want to send a collection email every day, starting one day after the due date. Or I could say, let's give them a little grace period. So we'll want to do it every 5 days, starting one day afterwards. And if I enable this, when I generate the invoice, if that payment fails, it throws it into our collection center. And then if it's in our collection center and I set that on the transaction, or if I manually went into the collection center to create a collection email schedule that I want to do for later, which you can do also based on transactions that you create in QuickBooks and import into our system, meaning you don't have to have them generated from our platform. You can utilize QuickBooks to do that. Then they go into our email history report, and you will see all pending emails, if there are any that are waiting to go out. And they will continually go based on how you defined at the transaction or from the collection center until you get paid. So once they're paid, you'll no longer see them. So if you go into an existing invoice, we'll take this one, for example. Let me go back. We'll go into the invoice, not the customer. So if I go into that transaction, you'll see inside of that posted transaction all of the emails that were sent out. And then because we use SendGrid, you'll be able to see whether it was delivered or opened. If the address was invalid and maybe it got dropped. And then, if it got canceled because it got paid. So you'll see that inside of our platform. And that just lets you know, hey, what's going on with this?
Well, that's nice. I'd say a huge pain point that we have with some of our subscription-based clients is whenever there's a failed payment, there's this lag because there's this time period of you've got to go in and you figure it out, and then you have to go and communicate, and then the bookkeeping piece is not easy and it's not
fully automated.
So
yeah, fully automated.
That's a huge win for our
That is
subscription-based businesses.
Yeah. Hey,
So if we go into, go ahead.
Well,
I would love to stop and do the poll real quick.
A great idea.
Is this a good place to just kind of pop in and do that? So, because we're coming up on the hour and I just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to fill that out. So The question of the day is, would you like to learn more about Recur 360 and have someone reach out to you? And I'm just going to leave that up for a few minutes, or not a few minutes, like a minute. And then I'll go ahead and close that out. So
And I would even say, Andrew, you can keep on talking because I know there's a lot here.
totally. Yep.
So feel free to keep on talking.
So,
Make sure that everybody has
and I can go over the hour if you can, but so a couple things we do that you don't see in QuickBooks is on the transaction, you will see all of their individual payment methods. And what the customer will see is that exact same thing. So if you go into the email that they get, they will see a breakdown on their PDF of this payment was processed on this date, this payment was processed on this date, and they'll also see it in line on their email of their recorded payments. If you're in QuickBooks Desktop, you only see the totals unless you go through reporting and transaction history. And inside of QBO, it's a pop-up, but the minute you click away from it, you don't see it again. But more importantly, the customer will never see a log of their payments. So what we present to the customer and to you in our interface is when those payments were made, and then also what the authorization or the check number was. So just things that you wouldn't see if you send your invoices from QuickBooks. Then on top of that, let me go back to where I was. You will see a payment history directly on the screen. So you can click into the different tabs down here to see what's going to affect this invoice. Is it a recurring payment? Is it a scheduled payment based on their terms? You know, how many payments have we received? If you're in the transaction, it's all at your fingertips. Nothing disappears. You don't have to click to different modules. It's all there. Liz, you asked about a recurring payment. How do we set up a payment plan? So on this particular customer here, they have an invoice balance due of $386.43. So what I set up was a recurring payment against an existing open invoice of theirs, where I said, hey, let's process $100 every week on Monday. The next one is October 18th. That's next Monday. And end this when it's fully paid. And if the remaining amount is like $10, we're not going to try to process 100. We're just going to process whatever that remaining amount is, and you're done.
Ooh,
so if you create an invoice on the first of the year or the first of the month for, say, monthly bookkeeping services that you haven't rendered yet, we can just process an unapplied received payment, post it to QuickBooks. And then as you create invoices, if you have auto apply credits in QuickBooks, those payments will just get auto applied to invoices that we generate. But if you create an invoice for a big project that you're doing and you want to allow them a payment plan, you'd create a one-time invoice in our system and then immediately go in and set up recurring payments to charge them weekly, monthly, quarterly, however you define, until it's paid off.
Well, and that's exactly what the client that I have in mind, that's exactly what they do is they have a, you know, a $20,000 or $30,000 invoice, and then they collect payments throughout the remainder of maybe 18 months or, you know, however many months. Yep. And so they do have a balance that's different at the end. You have got a code that you wanted to share out. And so I want to make sure that everybody has got the link to being able to go over to find you and connect you. And so I'm sharing it over in chat, the apps.com link.
Got it. You're sharing the apps.com link from the QuickBooks Online App Store.
Mm-hmm, correct.
So people can click on that. They can come to Recur 360 and just hop on a chat. And if you're a pro advisor, we do offer pro advisor plan. Similar to QuickBooks Online Accountant, if you have your account linked to multiple accounts, you can flip it between those in our platform. So if you're a bookkeeper that utilizes our platform for various customers, you can just pop in between them. And if one of them's on QuickBooks Desktop, you'll be able to see it in this view as well. Obviously, the QuickBooks Online, you can only see QuickBooks Online Accounts and Online Accountant, where with us, we meld them all together. And if you go into your accounts list, you'll see, hey, these three are online, these are desktop, and you can just pop in between them.
So I've got one more question, and it may be a no, that's okay. But I have a question about if you have somebody who on late fees, they wanted to charge a percentage rate per day. So I've had that asked before. Do you have that option?
Yeah, so if you go down to our late fees, you'll define a late fee item. You'll define whether you're charging a flat fee or a percentage of the total invoice. And then you're going to enable a grace period. I would say the norm is you don't charge a daily late fee. You typically would charge a monthly late fee on the invoice. But if somebody's looking to compound daily late fees, that could be something that we could add into the platform. It doesn't exist today. Sorry about my terminology here. That's what happens in a sandbox.
We're drinking, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just add alcohol. Well, okay. I feel like I just keep on throwing what if scenarios at you, and I haven't heard you say no to me yet.
Told you there weren't going to be many. In our account settings, which is what I'm in now, you can define your defaults for setting up a recurring invoice. You can define whether you want to have Recur 360 generate an invoice number when it posts to QuickBooks, or if you want to let QuickBooks assign the invoice number. You can define your own starting range so that when transactions post into QuickBooks, you can see, well, these 2000 level transactions QuickBooks generated and these R360 transactions we generated. So it very much differentiates where did the transaction occur or originate from.
That's very helpful. That's very helpful.
When we sync in open invoices from QuickBooks, we talked about automation. So let's say you're using T-Sheets or QuickBooks Time now, and you're creating your time and materials invoices, and you're doing a couple hundred at the end of the month. You don't want to email each one of those or manually process an ACH or a credit card. So what you would do is just create all of those in QuickBooks. And if you have open invoice sync, you can say if they're auto pay authorized, the minute it syncs it in, we're going to auto process it, auto email it, and auto post it back to QuickBooks. That may happen immediately. You could say, let's give it 2 days just in case we need to review it, or based on the terms, let's process it on the due date. We can send one email immediately if it's successful. We can send one email immediately if it failed. We can also limit that based on, hey, we only want to send these if they're in a particular customer group or more than one customer groups, meaning you might have retail and wholesale customers or residential and commercial, and you only want to bombard the commercial ones, not the residential. So you can drive that based on customer type.
Here's what I'm thinking. So whenever I'm thinking about the questions that I've asked you, and I'm thinking about the clients that I would want to send this direction, I'm not thinking about my easy, here's a payment there and here. I'm thinking about my scenarios where I've got these complex what if questions, and I need to be able to have more options and more capability to move away from some of the manual stuff. So I see how nimble it is. And it does make me think that it's time to make sure that me specifically even reaches out for a couple of different clients.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that we wrap up at the end here. So if you've got a couple more things you want to show, I want to.
Yeah, let me just go over this page.
Sure.
The rest of it is really kind of intricate. So, we can go over that specifically with people. But when we send out an invoice, such as this right here, and they click, to view to pay, you can control what they see. So do you want them to see past invoices? Do you only want to see open invoices that have specific terms on it? So you may create invoices and have different terms based on what you're providing, and therefore you can limit what they see based on that information. So we have a ton of different settings in here of whether you can allow them to do a partial balance, or as I mentioned earlier, a single payment against multiple invoices, or only invoices that are net 15 people can pay against. What do you want the invoice link text to look at? Only display invoices for customers within a particular customer group. We have various different templates that you can define your verbiage on. And over on the left side here, you can choose a whole bunch of different switches related to invoice settings, custom fields. If you've attached anything in QBO, you can pass it through our platform. Or if you have another platform, say like Locate Inventory, that writes its own PDF into QuickBooks Online, and the QuickBooks invoice is very generic, well, you can just pass through and not include our invoice and just include the other platform's invoice that pass through QBO, and we'll send it out on their behalf. Just we'll manage the payment processing on it. So there's a whole lot of different functionality and switches that you can enable. And one of the biggest things, especially if you're using us through Paya, is we can automate when ACHs don't fund, when they become insufficient funds. Or if you void a payment at the processor, you can auto void it in our platform, which voids it in QuickBooks. But more importantly, if you process an ACH today and in 3 days it gets charged back, we can automate creating an insufficient funds invoice, which then redirects it to be either a negative in your bank account or in a clearing account, which is a better way of defining where that NSF item goes to. And then you can tack on a processing fee. And then we auto relink the original payment from the invoice that you initially created. We link it to the NSF invoice, which handles your debits and credits from your balance sheet. And then we reinstate their original invoice and add an NSF fee on top of that. So in QuickBooks, that's a very manual process if you need to account for that. In our system, because we track the settlement status with the processor, we will automatically do that for you. So that's a pretty cool feature. And then on top of it, you mentioned, or somebody mentioned, hey, if I move from QuickBooks Online to desktop and I use Intuit Merchant Services, I have to get a whole new merchant account and I lose all of that stored information. Well, if you're using one of our integrated processors, we have a sync. So when you migrate from desktop to online or vice versa, as long as you have the sync enabled and it's based on company name or based on email address, we will relink all of those stored payment methods after your migration, as long as there's a match. So you won't lose any of that stored information. Or if you're using a website to collect that data, if we find a match on email or company name, we'll sync it directly into Recurse so it's usable. So just, there's so many features, it's tough to go over them. If you look at our full feature list, it's kind of endless because it's been ongoing for years at this point.
Well, this is because I'm going to go ahead and take the sharing because I want to make sure that we are closing out our hour. But I will say this, that you've got a lot of features here, and it's because this is what you do. So if you're going to come to a solution like this, it's because you need more than what the basic stuff will let you do. And
Correct.
Many of us know that we've got clients that are not just standard cookie cutter, cut and dry. And so we do have clients that definitely need to have more robust features. And I just named a couple that came off the top of my head. I'm sure that there's more out there that, with the group that's here could ask. So I'm going to say that for those of you who want to reach out, you have not only the link to be able to go and to schedule a meeting here with going to the apps.com link, or make sure that you throw it over in a chat or that you responded to the poll. And I want to thank everybody also for being here today, including you, Andrew. You've showed us a lot of options. Your platform is extraordinarily robust, and I appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And I want to make sure that everybody's joining us both in Facebook and connecting with us here in Zoom land. This is where a lot of the chat is happening, is in Zoom land. And so make sure that you're registered for that. And right around the corner, we have Scaling New Heights. So it's this month, y'all. I can't believe that it's going to be an in-live event. I'm excited about seeing my friends.
Me too. Very exciting.
So we will be having a live Scaling New Heights episode. We do it every single year. And with this year, we do not want to disappoint. So we will have ADP, Liscio, Practice Ignition, and Avalara that will be joining us. And then later on in November, we will have Practice Ignition, a deep dive, and then also Covinci. So thank you all for being here. And thank you for joining us today.
Yes,
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you guys. Hopefully we'll see some of you in a couple of weeks, and we'll definitely see all of you in a couple of weeks because we'll be doing our live episode from Texas. So look forward to seeing all of you. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.
Bye.